I'm Zoe, and I'd want to tell you about something that happened to my partner Henry. When I was 16, I met Henry at a friend's party. I couldn't stop thinking about how attractive he was. Girls were hitting on him all over the place. But then he approached me and asked me to dance. Yes, I said. The other girls were so envious that their eyes sprang out. We went to the movies the next day, although we didn't see much of it. We were too busy kissing in the back row, and he was a good kisser. Henry and I began seeing each other on a daily basis. He was continually buying me gifts and contacting me to tell me how much he adored me. Doesn't that seem like the ideal boyfriend? The only issue was that Henry might become extremely envious. For instance, we once went out to supper. Henry told me to quit flirting with him after the waiter took our order. I wasn't flirting with him at all. I mean, all I did was thank you, but it was enough to ruin Henry's mood for the remainder of the night. When Henry drove me home, I confronted him about his behavior, deeming it ridiculous. Henry, showing remorse, responded, "I'm sorry, baby. It's just that I love you so much, and the idea of you being with someone else drives me crazy." Dealing with Henry's temper was challenging, but my love for him always compelled me to forgive him. We had been in a relationship for about 6 months when we found ourselves in Henry's den, engrossed in a video game. Suddenly, an incredibly attractive man entered the room, leaving me in awe. He stood tall, possessed piercing blue eyes, and was dressed in a soldier's uniform. Henry was undeniably handsome, but this newcomer was on a whole different level. With great enthusiasm, Henry rushed over to embrace the man, exclaiming, "Cameron." He introduced me, "Zoe, meet my brother Cameron." As I approached, Cameron extended his hand for a handshake, and the touch of our fingers sent shivers down my spine. Cameron informed us that he was on leave from the army, and Henry suggested that we all spend time together. Henry asked if I minded, as he hadn't seen much of Cameron since he enlisted. Did I mind? Are you kidding me? I had the opportunity to hang out with this attractive guy, and Henry wasn't going to be jealous. The following weeks were filled with memorable moments. We ventured to Six Flags, dined out almost every evening, and enjoyed movies together. Yet, the most unforgettable times occurred at Henry's place. To be honest, some of those moments turned quite passionate between Henry and me. For instance, when the three of us watched TV, Cameron would subtly brush his thigh against mine or play with my hair, all while Henry remained blissfully unaware. It was undeniably wrong, but it ignited an irresistible desire within me. On the final day of Cameron's vacation, we all gathered in the den when Henry suddenly remembered he needed to run an errand for his mom. He hesitantly inquired if it was all right for me to stay with Cameron, as if it required his permission. Any excuse to spend more time with his captivating older brother? As Henry departed for the store, Cameron came over and settled beside me. Our proximity was so close that our knees brushed against each other. My heart raced, and I nervously bit my lip. I was acutely aware of his longing, and all I could think about was kissing him. Thankfully, Cameron took the initiative. He leaned in and kissed me passionately. Oh, my God. Kissing Henry was enjoyable, but this was an entirely different level of intensity. Henry made me feel like I was with a boy, but Cameron? He was a man, and his expertise was evident. Although Henry and I had engaged in some intimacy, we had never taken it all the way. I didn't feel ready. But in that moment, my sole desire was to be with Cameron. Things started to heat up, but then we heard Henry returning home. I hastily got dressed, and Cameron distanced himself from me. When Henry entered the room, I feared he would immediately discern what had transpired. But instead, he simply smiled and came over to kiss me. "Did you two have a good time while I was out?" he asked. "Yes," I replied. When Cameron returned to the army, he began sending me romantic emails and texts, and sometimes even his provocative photos. He described in vivid detail what he planned to do when he returned home, and in that moment, it felt like I was falling in love. I used to delete his messages, knowing it would devastate Henry if he found out I was flirting with his brother. I genuinely cared about Henry. But then again, Cameron was away in the army, and it didn't feel like a real affair. We were just talking. But then it all changed. Cameron texted me to announce his departure from the army and his return home for good. I was flooded with a whirlwind of emotions: excitement about Cameron's return, nervousness about the potential developments between us, and worry that Henry might sense something was amiss. However, my worries proved unnecessary. Henry had secretly planned a surprise party to celebrate Cameron's homecoming, and the gathering was bustling with people, leaving little opportunity for me to connect with Cameron. In fact, he barely acknowledged my presence. If it weren't for the steamy texts he had sent me, I might have believed our previous kiss was a figment of my imagination. Then came the unexpected moment when Cameron raised his voice and called for everyone's attention. He extended his hand, and an unfamiliar girl stepped forward to take it. "This is my fiancée, Skylar," Cameron declared. "She's the reason I left the army, and I want to spend more time with her." Cameron was engaged. It felt like my heart had been shattered into a million pieces. I had daydreamed about kissing Cameron again for so long, only to discover that he was now committed to someone else. I know I shouldn't have been upset. I was in a loving relationship with Henry. It's just that I had felt something special with Cameron and was curious to see where it could lead. But as fate would have it, it wasn't meant to be. With Cameron back home, I saw more of him, but Skylar was usually by his side. Things had changed considerably. We found ourselves going on double dates together, and the more time I spent with Skylar, the more I questioned what Cameron saw in her. She didn't strike me as particularly attractive, and her lack of wit was evident. She laughed at every one of Cameron's jokes, even when they weren't funny. In my mind, Cameron should have chosen me. It would have been a better match for him, but fate had other plans. One day, I was at Henry's house when Cameron walked in. He informed Henry that their mother had requested a ride to the store because her car wouldn't start. Henry asked if I wanted to accompany them, but I declined. This was my opportunity to have a private conversation with Cameron and uncover what was really going on. Once Henry had left, there was a moment of awkwardness. I wasn't sure where to begin. But then, Cameron apologized. He confessed that he had proposed to Skylar solely because she had informed him she was pregnant, but she had later miscarried. He felt a profound sense of guilt and didn't want to hurt her. However, he couldn't stop thinking about me. "I know you're still with Henry," he said, "but I want you." Those words were all I needed to hear. We embraced passionately and quickly shed our clothes. That first encounter with Cameron was nothing short of amazing. He possessed a remarkable understanding of how to satisfy a woman. By then, I had been intimately involved with Henry for some time, but he didn't excel in the bedroom. Cameron, on the other hand, had experience, and it was evident. Following that encounter, Cameron and I spent nearly every moment together. I couldn't seem to get enough of him. His physique was nothing short of extraordinary, having been sculpted during his time in the army. I found myself deeply in love, but then I missed my period. I knew it couldn't be Henry's child, as we always used protection, but Cameron and I hadn't been as cautious. When I broke the news to Cameron, he responded with sweetness and a promise to leave Skylar so we could get married. He expressed his desire to be present in our baby's life and couldn't bear the thought of not being there for them. The most challenging part was revealing the situation to Henry. My feelings for him remained, and he was my baby's uncle, which made the conversation all the more difficult. Henry was utterly devastated, and witnessing a grown man cry was a deeply uncomfortable experience for me. "I hope he cheats on you one day," Henry said in his anguish. Cameron and I eventually tied the knot in a modest courthouse ceremony. Henry, his parents, and even my own parents chose not to attend due to their disapproval of my decision to run off with Cameron. My parents also believed I was too young to be married and have a child. I didn't let their absence bother me, as I was convinced that Cameron and I were destined to be together forever. However, it didn't take long for our relationship to take a drastic turn. During my pregnancy, I gained a significant amount of weight, which seemed to trouble Cameron. He began making hurtful comments about my appearance, particularly whenever I ate anything other than a salad. His snide remarks and pig-like snorts became a regular occurrence. After our daughter Lucy was born, I hoped things would return to normal, but Cameron showed little interest in spending time with her, and he completely avoided changing diapers. My growing depression led to comfort eating, which only exacerbated the situation. Cameron threatened to leave me if I didn't lose weight, but paradoxically, his negative comments drove me to eat even more. I ended up gaining 100 pounds. The more he criticized me, the more I turned to food for solace. I despised my appearance but couldn't break free from the cycle of overeating. It was the one thing that brought me happiness. Cameron struggled to find stable employment after leaving the army and had to work as a barista to make ends meet. He claimed to be working overtime to support our baby, but whenever I asked for money to buy formula, he insisted he had none to spare. I grew increasingly suspicious that Cameron was involved in an affair. To confirm my suspicions, I took Lucy and waited outside his workplace one day. As fate would have it, when he emerged from the coffee shop, he was holding hands with another woman. They shared a passionate kiss before climbing into his car and driving away. My heart sank and I hurried home to pack our belongings. There was no way I could continue to stay with someone who was unfaithful. When Cameron returned home, he found my bags in the hallway and immediately inquired, "What's going on?" I confronted him, shouting, "I know you're seeing someone else. I'm leaving and I'm taking Lucy with me." Cameron pleaded with me to stay, vowing to end his involvement with the other woman and professing his love for me like never before. He took me to bed, and we fell asleep in each other's arms. However, when I awoke, I found myself alone. Cameron had vanished, taking Lucy with him, and he left a note behind that read, "There's no way I'm letting my daughter grow up with a mother like you." I had to go to court to fight for custody of my daughter, but I couldn't afford a lawyer. The Cameron family provided legal representation for him, and he portrayed me as an unfit mother who posed a danger to our child. Ultimately, he won full custody. I understand that some people may feel I deserved this fate due to my prior infidelity with Henry's brother. But I have learned a painful lesson, and I will never engage in such behavior again. Currently, I am working 2 jobs to save up enough money to hire a lawyer, as I am determined to regain custody of my daughter. I will not rest until I succeed.